Hello guys, and thanks for coming here. So if you click this video, you're probably wondering if crit is going to be back, right? And that's exactly what I'm gonna ask in this video. So keep watching it till the end so that you can have a reasonable answer, and then I will also leave a tier list during the video that can actually help you understand which champions could be better, right? I didn't play PBE, so I don't have an idea of how strong they could be, but I will give you a reasonable justification about everything that I think and why they could be nice or they could be not, right? So this is pretty nice. We're gonna go into calculations, so we focus on the mathematics behind everything and what can actually change with the change that they are actually doing, right? And if ADC on crit side, it's actually gonna be back, right? So again, guys, this is a little introduction. If you're really interested and you like this video, I hope you can leave a like and subscribe. It takes a lot of time to actually do such videos, but I'm always happy and more than happy to actually deliver this kind of content to you. If you liked it, please hit the subscribe button, and let's just get started. So, Infinity Edge, it's been, I think, around 3 to 4 years that the item is basically non-existent, right? The main problem that I can actually assure that we have is that basically Infinity does nothing. Like, it doesn't deal damage, but it doesn't give anything else. While so many other items, like Bruiser ones, they give HP, they give armor, they give AD, so they give a ton of stats and everything, but the Infinity just turns out to be one of the worst items probably ever been, because again, you need more than one item to actually make the crit valuable, and at the same time the cost is not worth the buy, right? Also, to actually buy the Infinity Edge, you need to have a lot of gold. Like, even if you want to take the low pieces, the only pieces that you can actually get is the MC Sword, the Pickaxe, and then the Crit Cloak. All the free items are not bad, right? But the threshold is something like 900 gold. And if you don't want to buy a shit cloak, because the cloak, you know, it's a really bad item, you need to have at least 900 gold to actually base on that. Plus the fact that we don't have a lot of attack speed if we actually first pick this item. So Infinity Edge kind of became a secondary item, like a third item, when it was usually the first pick selection, because of how much AD and lack of probably itemization there was in the game. So now we're in a different situation. We have so many different items, but we probably missed the good starter ones, we can actually say, okay? There was the static meta, which, we had it for, I think, 3 to 4 months, and it was really nice because, everyone was rushing static, basically, but we had a starter item, and now it feels really bad, in my opinion. I will let you understand this while we progress, but the main problem that I'm actually seeing is that starter items are never good enough, right? So if you're playing crit ADC and you get to your one spike item, you're never dealing damage. That's the real truth, right? If you play Kraken, you're not dealing damage. If you're playing Storm Razor, you're not dealing damage. Those items are super down-tuned. That's because of so many interactions. We can actually say, for example, the Jhin going for Storm Razor first is really strong, so they had to gut down the item, then they had to gut down the static because it was actually, you weren't even playing with the waves and stuff because you were basically one-shotting them. So the problem that I see is that, we don't need items that are actually doing work with their passives. Like, we need an item that gives statistics, because the problem with all the item buffs and the Infinity Edge buff, it's the AD. Okay, so we are talking about this really important aspect of the game and why ADC need a lot of AD currently. So back in the time, there was a lot of room for the ADC items to actually have AD, and the effects were a bit less. Like, we didn't really care if, we had an item and this item had to do, he had to dash, Gale Force and stuff. We don't really need any item specifically on ADC to shine. We need statistics. We need a lot of AD. That's because, again, if you want to play crit, the crit is an amplifier of your base AD. If your base AD is low, then your damage will be low as well. That's what you kind of need to understand, right? So what is the problem, right? Like, what's the problem? Why we have low AD and stuff? That's because, again, the ADC items now give more attack speed, and they give less AD. So because of that, to actually deal damage with a crit carry champions, you need two things that we currently don't have, right? The first one is the levels. So we miss the levels because, again, playing bot lane now, it feels really bad because we have like 2 to 3 levels in less. So less levels equals less statistic, which means also less AD. Okay, so without this AD, it's actually harder to get kills or even to scale up. That's pretty normal, pretty common, I will say. You're losing to every lane, you're not able to make any kind of play, you need your team, and you need to get the items as well. I kinda like to compare the situation to how Kyle is working right now, right? If you think about Kyle works in a way that she needs level 16 to actually play the game, no? And that's exactly what we're talking about. Kyle needs both level 16 and she needs the items as well. Even if you have Kyle and you have like level 16, that doesn't mean you're gonna win the game. Same goes for Kassadin. If you play Kassadin but you're level 16, this is not gonna win you the game. You need the items as well. So ADC currently is in such a state. You need both the levels and both the items to actually carry out the game. Okay, and that's exactly the problem on solo queue. Since people are more focused on specific things like objectives and stuff, and not really an ADC scaling because they know that it's not the win condition on most of their games, this turns out to be really bad. So you get one item and then you don't even scale at all. The problem with the crit compared to the lethality is that the first item spike is way worse, and the crit items are not even scaling that much compared to the lethality ones. It's insanely wrong, right? So you can get 3 to 4 items lethality and they will even deal more damage than having 3 to 4 crit items. So what is Riot's approach here? The approach that they have is to increase the damage of like your 3rd to 4th item to make sure that you're actually able to win when you actually have 2, right? So we're not buffing early, we're not buffing mid-game, we don't really care. We're just buffing a specific spike with your items, right? You buy 2 items and you will feel a spike, right? What are the problems again? The level difference will always be a problem, right? Because if you have less AD, the critical damage, right, from 40 to 50, it's not gonna be really impactful. Where is the critical damage impactful? As ADC, right? It's impactful when you have a champion that deals damage or has bonus damage increased depending on his AD. An example, and now we will show the tier list, is Draven. Okay, so Draven has his Q and his bonus AD goes on his Q. So the more AD you draft on Draven, the better it is, and the critical amplifier just amplifies that even more. Okay. Also, Jinx Rockets, right? It's 110% increased damage, and this does an insane work of damage, especially if your AD is really high. Caitlyn Headshot, right? It's the same thing. Same goes for everything of those, right? You have a lot of damage, and then the output gets scaled based on your critical strike, and multiplier. That's really important. Vayne Tumble, I could go way talking about this, but we have a tier list here, and it's pretty much self-explanatory. The more AD you have with the champion that you have, the more the buff will actually be hard. And you also need the levels, so avoid to actually go behind. Okay, I expect the most out of champions like Jhin, for example, because Infinity Edge, again, critical multiplier on Jhin is really strong. That's because he has a really insane base AD. Vayne Tumble, it's gonna be insanely strong. Caitlyn is going to be really strong. So all those champions, they can benefit a lot from such an advantage of this buff. But again, the main issue will always be the same. You need to not go behind in laning phase, which is why playing crit carry is always slightly better. But champions that can actually go for lethality option in early game and then transition to an hypothetical Infinity Edge as a 3rd item, they're going to get a huge buff, right? So talking about such champions, we see Caitlyn, because she can go, for the famous Yomus into Collector and then Infinity Edge. This is an insane buff for her. That's a thing. Jhin, again, he can go for Yomu, Collector, Infinity. That's an insane snowball potential. And I kind of see the points, but I usually find myself to have more problems before the 3rd item. That's what I'm trying to explain. Like, the game seems way more doomed because before the level 3, no? I'm playing specifically on Master currently, but I usually was used to play on GM, which saw Grandmasters and Challenger. And the main problem is always the same. The game is too fast-paced, okay? It's too fast-paced and the people are not willing to actually commit on a game for more than 30 minutes. That's because they know that the game is just so fast that if you make a mistake, the game is pretty much over, right? It's just a mental thing and also how the game is working. You have some bounties to come back, of course, and stuff, but again, imagine you're an ADC and you lose the lane and you're level 8 and the enemy ADC is level 11. Yeah, you can for sure keep up going, but you will never get back such levels. That's the main problem. So if enemy team played for bot and you don't have any kind of pillback or something, you will never ever get to the point where the enemy DC will go. That's why bot lane metas became a thing, right? You play for bot lane for a few, and then your ADC goes to 3 items, and then that's pretty much it. That's what we don't like, because, I mean, holy, it's insanely bad for the game state to actually say, okay, this guy went for 3 items, enemy ADC has no actually counterplay to get back to the game, and that's about it. That's the current situation of ADC, especially with lethality. So what they do is, I go 1 item lethality, I win the lane, but then I'm pretty much useless. That's the current situation, specifically with Senna, Varus, and so on. But now we're saying, okay, we're gonna go with an Infinity Edge buff, and increase the damage with the other champs. And my honest opinion about this is yes and no. I don't think this is gonna change the way the game plays, sadly. Like, it's all... The problem with ADC, it's not about the damage, okay? Yeah, the damage is pretty low as well, so this can actually help out the games and how you feel about playing ADC, so that you have your game a bit more on your control, but the problem will always be the same, so you're not able to reach the spike and the levels because of how your team plays around you. That's the main problem that will always be there, right? If your team is not playing for you, this is a pointless buff and it will not do anything. Instead, if we're talking about competitive, this buff is insanely strong and it doesn't make any sense, okay? Because when you're playing a Jinx and you go just Infinity, right, and you close it up, you're so strong, and if the team like gives insane peel, you're always gonna go 1v9 machine. So I think the buff is really wrong, especially for solo queue, because again, you don't need to pump up damage, you just need to increase the levels a bit and transition the damage from early to late game. Sorry, to late game to early. So if you understand such a thing, it's pretty easy. I want a bit more agency in early game, because I feel like I'm so useless with crit carries every single time. So, I mean, enemy team could pick Shen Tank on bot and I will die to him. It's insane. This guy just goes plated steel cups, they rush plated, they rush frozen art, you get 1 item but you still don't deal damage to them. That's what I feel it's the wrong of the game, right? I don't like this. Like, I personally don't like to buy 1 item and then I get countered to another one. Hello? I am kind of forced to go Kraken when I play Jinx. I am forced to play, items that are specific to my role. I can't really go on it when I play Caitlyn. It will be such a grief, right? So that's what I'm trying to explain. If you get the point, the main problem will always be that enemy team has such a strong items to counter mines, but my items are so bad even if I close them. And my levels are so bad. So please, make sure that I have more agency in the game, in the early, so I close 1 item and I actually feel strong, I can say, I want to 1v1 this guy, let's do this, right? So I have a little bit of agency in early game. Instead, again, I pick static, there's nothing I can do, I just push the wave and that's about it, right? So I'm playing as a macro player, I'm not doing anything on the map, I'm just pushing and I call it, right? I can maybe rotate and help my team, but this is not a play that I can actually say, oh, I did something by myself, right? So this is pretty nice. That's what I'm trying to explain. So Kraken, again, you need a lot of time to actually input autos. How much time do you have to input autos currently? Basically, it's 0. There's not even a lot of on-it meta currently. Like, no one is playing Varus on it. Everyone is playing it lethality. That's because, again, you have no actual time to it because you're gonna die earlier. So, buffing crit will make sure that you are gonna deal an insane amount of damage at first, and then it's gonna be like, okay, that's about it, this will increase the damage that you can actually output at first. So basically you have a bit more burst, but that is gonna be around 2 to 3 items again, and the laning phase will not change at all, right? So now we answer the most important question, which is the meta, right? How does this impact the meta? Like, is it gonna be insanely changed and stuff? Well, the reason is that probably the reply to that is yes, right? I think buffing Infinity Edge just buffs basically 95% of the ADCs. They would love to go Infinity, but the problem remains the same. The itemization for the Infinity, it's kinda awful. Like, it's been a lot since the itemization is basically really bad because of like the 20% crit ratio, right? We're talking about 20% crit ratio. Back in the time it was 25, and 25 crit ratio actually does an insane job. If you think about it, like, the difference is insane. It's like 1 out of 4 autos you're gonna crit this guy, no? It doesn't really work like that when you talk about crit, but I just want you to understand that 25% is actually nice if you feel, okay, I wanna rush this item, right? It's not bad, it looks nice, but 20% it just feels, it feels awful, right? Because you're just praying that you're gonna hit the guy, and what do you have if you don't crit, right? That's always the problem that will remain. If you don't crit, you basically have 0 value out of Infinity Edge. And I will give you just this feedback, which is RADC is fine, like RADC on a good position, like the crit ones. And the reality is they are fine. Again, we can't really, the conclusions are that they could be fine, they could be better, but we miss a lot the experience, right? We need a perfect game, and solo queue just doesn't give that. I think the agency for the ADC crit on solo queue, on competitive, will be fairly better, and I'm really happy about that. But I mean, Riot Games has to understand that this game it's been played for so many people, and people, they don't come back home and they say, okay, I wanna play some competitive League of Legends. I mean, 99% of the people, they just don't do that. They go solo queue because, again, some people like to do that, or maybe they don't have friends. So you kind of have to think more about the player base that is playing solo queue rather than the one that plays competitive. Yeah, I like ADC to carry my games on competitive. I think it's nice if I can actually save them. But like, can we actually make something which is not, building bruiser items on ADCs? Talking about Smolder, that can actually work? That's the problem, Like, you have to either increase the damage to an insane ton of damage, so that, you make a mistake in front of me, I'm one-shotting you, or you transition the statistics of ADCs to early game. You increase the HP, you increase the AD, and then you shift them a bit less to the late game. That's because it's gonna help so much for the survivability and the utility that you can actually provide as ADC, okay? So guys, after this talk, I genuinely want to know what you think about it. I hope you can, you're gonna have a nice day. And again, leave in the comments what you think about such changes. I said mine, so I hope this video can help someone to understand a bit more what's gonna be on the next patch. And see you on the next one, guys. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye.